The world had written our land off as nothing but dust and barren soil, but it told my people that beneath this very dust lay the gold of our freedom. Then, in a single day, we earned 1.1 billion. It was a day that would be etched into the memory of every man, woman, and child in Burkina Faso, a day that began like any other under the vast, often unforgiving Sahelian sun, but would end with fueled looking at this landlocked West African nation in a new, astonishing light. On this single, momentous day, the news broke, sending shockwaves not just across the continent but around the globe. Burkina Faso, a country more known for its vibrant culture and resilient people than for its economic might, had just secured a staggering $1 billion from a groundbreaking oil deal. The very idea was revolutionary, a narrative twist so profound that it felt like fiction. From forgotten dusty wells, a torrent of black gold was set to flow, promising to write Africa's economic destiny in real time. The question on everyone's lips was simple yet profound. How did a nation without a single inch off coastline, a nation once on the periphery of global markets, manage to orchestrate a monumental economic turnaround, cashing in on a scale that was previously unimaginable? This is the story of that day, a story that is about so much more than just oil. It's a story about a revolution, about a nation taking control of its own destiny. The day then news of the $1 billion deal hit the ground in Burkina Faso. It was as if the earth itself had shifted. The announcement came not from a press conference in a lavish foreign hotel, but from the heart of the nation's capital, Gaju. It was a declaration of economic independence that resonate with the force of a drum beat, a sound that carried from the bustling city streets to the most remote villages. For years, the global markets had overlooked Burkina's its potential, buried beneath headlines of instability and poverty, but no, in a single audacious move, the nation had not just entered the game, it had changed the rules. The oil wells in Sahel, long dismissed by international experts as dormant or commercially unviable, had roared to life. This was not a stroke of luck, it was the result of a meticulously executed plan, a masterclass in geopolitical strategy and unwavering efficiency. At the helm of this transformation was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a leader whose vision was as clear as it was bold. He had systematically learnt the bureaucratic red tape that had for so long stifled any attempts at exploration and development. He understood that the old ways of doing business, which often benefited foreign interests more than the African nations themselves, were a dead end. He decisively cut out the middlemen who siphoned off profits, fast-tracked partnerships with local entrepreneurs and experts, and sent a clear message to the world. The era of exploitation was over. He turned his back on the overpriced consultants from abroad who often offered textbook solutions that were disconnected from realities on the ground. Instead, he placed his trust in regional experts, individuals who understood the land, its people, and its potential. They were theons who knew the secrets of the Sahel, whispers of the earth that spoke of riches that lay beneath the Tumingoff. This bold move was nothing short of genius. As geopolitical tensions in other parts of the world caused disruptions in global oil supply, prices began to soar. It was a window of opportunity, a moment of perfect alignment, and Burkina Faso, under Captain Traoré's guidance, seized it with both hands. They did just strike oil, they struck at the perfect moment to maximize their returns, cashing in on a scale that sent a clear message to the world. Burkina Faso was a serious player. The energy giants of the world, who had for so long dictated the terms of engagement in Africa, came knocking. They arrived with their complex contracts and their promises of investment, expecting business as usual, but they were met with a firm, unyielding resolve. Captain Traoré did not flinch. His response was as audacious as it was simple: no exploitation, no giveaways. This was the birth of the Sovereign Barrel Doctrine, a new policy that would forever change the relationship between Burkina Faso and the global oil industry. Under this doctrine, the nation would retain a 51% controlling stake in all new oil ventures. For the first time, an African nation was not just asking for a seat at the table, it was setting the table. Thick crumbs of the past were replaced by a feast of opportunity, a chance to build a future on its own terms. The reaction across the nation was electric. The streets of Ouagadougou, a city that had seen its share of struggles, erupted in celebration. This was not just about the money, as significant as it was about what the money represented: dignity, Control and the beginning of a new chapter in the nation's history, this was more than an oil boom. It was a political statement, a promise to the people that their nation's wealth would finally be used to build a better future for them. The first billion-dollar day was just the beginning, a powerful opening statement in a story that was just starting to be written in the waka of the historic $1. 1 billion oil deal. Many world leaders might have been tempted to consolidate their power to lean their own pockets or to hand over lucrative contracts to powerful foreign corporations in exchange for political support, but Captain Ibrahim Traoré was not like most leaders. His vision for Burkina Faso was radically different, rooted in a deep-seated belief that the nation's newfound wealth belonged to its people. The moment Theo dollars began to flow, he made his intentions crystal clear. This was not a windfall for the elite, it was a resource for the masses. His first executive order was a testament to this commitment. He established the Burkina National Energy Fund, a sovereign wealth fund with a difference. This was not some secret offshore account accessible only to a select few. It was a transparent public climate fund with every transaction subject to the rigorous oversight of the nation's parliament. The fund's mandate was simple and unwavering. Every single dollar was to be channeled directly into projects that would transform the lives of ordinary citizens, new schools for the children, modern clinics to care for thetic clean water systems, to quench the thirst of a nation, and a network off-roads to connect every corner of the country. But Captain Traoré's bold blueprint for a people-powered economy didn't stop there. He understood that true economic independence was not just about earning money from oil, it was about building a self-sufficient and diversified economy. He refused to let a single barrel of crude oil be exported until a portion of the refining process took place on Burkinabé soil. This was a strategic move designed to create jobs, to transfer valuable skills to the local workforce, and to ensure that the nation captured more of the value chain from its precious natural resource. The goal was clear: to move beyond being a simple exporter of raw materials and to become a nation that could process, refine, and add value to its own products. The early results of this people-centered approach were nothing short of remarkable. Just 6 months after the oil windfall began rural electrification, a long-standing challenge in a country with a vast and sparsely populated countries, jumped by an astonishing 24%. Technical schools, once struggling with outdated equipment and limited resource, received a massive injection of funding to build state-of-the-art oil engineering programs from scratch, preparing a new generation of Burkinabé experts to lead the nation's energy sector. Captain Traoré was not interested in becoming another petrodollar dictator ruling over a population dependent on government handouts. His ambition was far greater: to create Africa's first truly people-centered oil economy, a model that other nations in the continent could aspire to. This radical approach did not go unnoticed by the international community representatives. From the International Monetary Fund, IMF, accustomed to dealing with indebted nations seeking bailouts for extended private meetings, intrigued and perhaps a little unsettled by this new paradigm, envoys from the European Union had long viewed Burkina Faso through the lens of aid and development tasks, were now courting the Nationas, a strategic partner, but Captain Traoré was playing hardball. "We've been robbed for centuries," he declared in a televised address. "This time we lead." This was not just rhetoric. It was a statement, a declaration that Burkina Faso would no longer be a passive recipient of foreign aid, but an active architect of its own future, to ensure that the people were not just passive beneficiaries of this new wealth, but active participants in their nation's economic transformation. The government launched an ambitious public education campaign, state-owned radio station reached even the most remote corners of the country, began broadcasting oil literacy programs. These programs explained in simple, accessible language the complex process of how crude oil is transformed into cash and how that cash is then used to build clinics, schools, and roads. Transparency is not just a buzzword, it was a cornerstone of Captain Traoré's policy. The revenues and expenditures of the Burkina National Energy Fund were published monthly for all to see. Imagine it: a nation's oil wealth being treated not as a state secret but as public property, a resource that belonged to every citizen. The message was clear and powerful: no more charity, no more pity. Burkina Faso had fuel in its ground and a fire in its soul. a determination to build a future of prosperity and dignity for all its people. The news of Burkina Faso's sudden and spectacular entry into the global energy market sent a tidal wave of shock and disbelief across the world. The established order, that comfortable and predictable dynamics of the global oil industry, had been thrown into disarray. The traditional power players, the multinational oil corporations, the former colonial power swell had long held sway over Africa's sources, and the international Finkel watchdogs, who were accustomed to dictating economic policy, were caught completely off guard. This wasn't supposed to happen. A landlocked nation, one that had been branded as unstable and on the brink of collapse just a year earlier, had not just entered the game, it had flipped the entire board. The global energy turnover, the intricate dance of supply and demand that determined the fortunes of nations, had been irrevocably altered. The reaction in the corridors of war was a mixture of panic and disbelief. France, the former colonial ruler of Burkina Faso, reportedly called for an emergency energy summit, scrambling to understand the implications of this new development. American consulting firms, who had for years peddled their expensive advice to African governments, flooded the inbox of officials in West Africa with mail-send offers of assistance, desperate to get a piece of the action. And the Chinese delegations, ever the astute observers of global power shifts, were on the ground in Ouagadougou within 72 hours of the revenue report being made public. The reason for this frantic activity was simple. Captain Ibrahim Traoré refused to play by the old rules. He wouldn't sell out his nation's future for a quick profit. He took a firm and uncompromising stance against the shadowy world of international finance, banning the use of offshore shell companies that were often used to hide profits and evade taxes. In a move that sent shock waves through the industry, he canceled 14 legacy contracts that had been signed under previous, less scrupulous regimes. These were contracts that had been negotiated in secret, contracts that had given foreign companies a disproportionate share of profits while leaving Burkina Faso with a pittance, and in their place he introduced a new non-negotiable condition for all foreign partners. In exchange for access to Burkina Faso's oil, they would be required to invest in the nation's infrastructure. No more free rides, no more extraction, with it responsibility for the Western markets that had grown accustomed to a system that allowed them to extract Africa's wealth without contributing to its development. This was a nightmare, but for the growing Pan-African movements that were calling for a new era of self-determination and economic justice. Captain Traoré became an overnight island. International media, often a reflection of the interests of the global powers, tried to spin the story to downplay its significance. Some dismissed it as a temporary spike, a fluke that would soon correct itself. Others, with a hint of condescension, claimed that their serves were being overestimated. This was all just a flash in the pan, but Captain Traoré remained calm and collected in the face of this skepticism. His government responded not with angry rhetoric, but with cold hard facts. They published independent geological service audited in real time by reputable international firms, and they made this information available to the public in a direct and pointed response to the critics of government. Spokesperson simply stated, "We don't need your approval, we have the proof." The ripple effects of Burkina Faso's bold move were felt across the Sahel. Neighboring countries like Niger and Mali, which also hadn't tapped natural resources, were now looking to Burkina Faso as a model. They sent delegations to Ouagadougou to consult with Captain Traoré's government, eager to learn how they too could replicate this success. This was a seismic shift in Africa's place in the global energy conversation. The continent was no longer just a source of raw materials to be exploited. It was becoming a strategic layer of force to be reckoned with. The oil was not just changing the economics of the region, it was changing the very nature of its diplomacy. Burkina Faso, a silent observer in regional summits, was now the one with leverage, the one that could set the agenda, and at the center of it all was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a young leader with a clear playbook, a valuable product, and the unwavering support of his people. The old global oil order had just met its newest and most formidable challenge, and the world would never be the same again. The transformation of Burkina Faso in the wake of the oil boom was nothing short of cinematic, for the discovery of Black gold, the nation's economy was on its knees. Thoroughs, once arteries of trade and connection, were broken and impossible in many places. Hospitals meant to be heavens of healing often ran on fumes, lacking even the most basic medical supplies and youth. Unemployment, a ticking time bomb in a country with a young and growing population, was a source of constant social and political instability, but in less than a year the landscape of the nation began to change so dramatically that it was almost hard to believe. In Sahel belt, a region that had been plagued by insecurity and insurgency for years, a new sense of hope was taking root. Where once there were only whispers of fear, there were now the sounds of construction, the hum of machinery, and the chatter of workers queuing up for jobs outside newly built solar-powered refineries. The numbers told a story of a nation on the move. Over 17,000 new construction jobs were created, and in a radical departure from the past, these were not outsourced to foreign companies. They were given to local hands, to the young men and women of Burkina Faso who were eager to build a better future for their country. Concrete was being poured, trucks were moving goods across newly paved roads, and small sleepy towns were being transformed into bustling trade hubs overnight. But the revolution wasn't just about large-scale infrastructure projects, it was a bootlicking the lives of ordinary people in the most remote corners of the country. This was the vision behind Captain Traoré's One Barrel, One Village plan, a simple yet powerful initiative that linked the extraction of oil directly to the development of rural communities. For everyone, 0 barrels of oil that were extracted from the ground, one village received a comprehensive development pack: solar infrastructure to light up their homes and schools, modern irrigation tools to boost their agricultural productivity, and digital access to connect them to the wider world. This was a bottom-up revolution, a development model that empowered communists to take control of their own destinies. Women's cooperatives, the backbone of many rural economies, were receiving migrants from the oil taxes to build their own processing centers, allowing them to add value to their agricultural products and to earn a better income. Teenagers who had once fled to the cities in search of work, often ending up in precarious and exploitative situations, were nor turning home, drawn by the new opportunities that were emerging in their own communities. Burkina Faso had also launched its first Prague Incubatora, groundbreaking initiative that brought together engineers and farmers to collaborate on innovative solutions to reduce the country's dependence on diesel fuel. This was a testament to Captain Traoré's vision, a vision that was not just about pumping oil, but about using the proceeds from that oil to fuel the nation's spirit of innovation and self-reliance. The changes were not just economic, they were also institutional. Government ministries, once seen as slow and inefficient, bureaucracies, were being structured to operate more like modern companies with clear key performance indicators (KPIs) that were directly tied to the effective and transparent use of the oil revenue. The message was clear: public service was not a right. It was a responsibility, a sacred trust to be carried out with the utmost efficiency and integrity. Foreign journalists Wano landed in Ouagadougou expecting to find familiar narrative of African poverty and despair, were leaving stunned by the pace and scale of the progress they were witnessing. This is an aid, one renowned international correspondent wrote in a widely circulated article. This is ambition. It was true, the dusty back roads of the past were now paved arteries of trade and commerce, a testament to a nation that was on theme of. Captain Traoré had not just discovered oil, he had discovered a nuisance of purpose for his nation and for a country that had once been seen as last in line. It was now blazing a trail that others were desperately eager to follow. This was the Burkinabé model, a new blueprint for a prosperous and self-reliant Africa.